Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cameo Cinema's first Zoomfari. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to learn a little bit about those majestic creatures you can maybe hear or see in the background soon, the giraffes. And when we're here, you can type in your questions by using your keypad, and I will try to answer as many as you can. But right now, let's head out to Safari West and meet up with our guide, Nate. Hi, Nate.
Hi there, Cathy. How's your morning going?
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm so excited to be part of Zoomfari today. How's it going out there?
It's going great. It's a beautiful sunny day. I've got at least 2 giraffes hanging out with me here, and I've got a big pile of their favorite foods. So I'm hoping a few others will walk by to see us while we're out here doing this presentation.
Really great. Now, we call them giraffes. What's the real scientific name for them?
Well, the scientific name for giraffe is going to be Giraffe, but if we're talking about our specific variety here, the reticulated giraffe, that would be Giraffe leopardalis, leopardalis reticulata, which is a fancy way of saying something that kind of might have looked like a camel meets a leopard when someone first discovered these.
Oh my gosh. And it looks like they're pretty hungry this morning.
They are. This is Kalula. She's always hungry for cottonwood. It's her very favorite. That's what we're feeding them today, leaves from the cottonwood trees that grow here at Safari West.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, before we talk about some of the other pieces and parts of this amazing creature, let's talk a little bit about the patterns on their coat, their spots. Do you want to share a little bit about it? How do you tell them apart?
Well, it's funny. A lot of people will tell me, Nate, I don't understand how you tell them apart. Don't they all look so similar? But, for us that are around these animals every day, they look as different as your children might at home. There are subtle differences that you just know by spending time observing them. And one of those subtle differences is indeed the coat pattern. Giraffe have unique patterns. These spots that you see here, yes, the reticulated giraffe is usually going to come in this lighter shade of brown. They're
Am
usually
I
going to have
flipping when
relatively
I talk?
geometric spots, but they're all going to be different, unique like human fingerprints. And in fact, we have one giraffe in particular who I can always spot. Her name is Kasha, and it looks like she might have wandered off on us here, but she's got one perfect heart-shaped spot on her behind, and if she wanders back on through, we'll make sure you guys get to see that.
Okay, that'd be great. There are also different shades of color, right?
Yes, although this has a lot to do with the species as well. Between each species, say the reticulated giraffe here, for example, they might be slightly different shades, especially depending on family history and genetics. But the biggest difference in color is going to be between species of giraffe. For example, the Maasai giraffe is a giraffe that is far darker in color. There's a giraffe called the Rothschild giraffe that has much larger white spaces between its spot and that can therefore be a little bit lighter in color as well.
And where in their natural habitat would you find giraffes?
So all species of giraffe are going to come to us from Africa. That's where you're going to find all the different varieties in the wild. And they're going to come from Africa's grasslands and some sparse woodlands around the grasslands as well.
Oh, nice. And you have how many giraffes at Safari West?
We've got about a dozen giraffe in the herd here, which, you asked me that today, I could tell you a dozen, but that number does change all the time. We have been breeding our herd of giraffe here since we started housing these animals back in the 90s, and we usually get one new little one every single year.
Oh, that's incredible. I want to remind everybody that's out there watching our Zoomfari, if you have a question for Nate, make sure that you use your keyboard and type it in because I'm happy to ask. So Nate, let's go to talk about babies. So tell us a little bit about when a mama gets pregnant and how long does it take to have a baby and a little bit of information about the baby itself. Can you share that?
Absolutely. Being a giraffe breeding facility, we love talking about baby giraffe here. And really, they're fascinating. I mean, an animal this big has a really big baby. Baby giraffe gestation is going to be around 14 to 16 months for this animal, which is a long time. But as I said, they're growing a big baby. Those babies are born at some cases almost 6 feet tall, around 150 pounds when they're born. So they are not small whatsoever. It's also worth noting that mother giraffe give birth standing up, which means first thing a baby giraffe experiences when it's born into the world is going to be a 6-foot drop straight to the ground. But you know, you can't be that bad because the baby giraffe is usually up and walking in 30 minutes or less after birth as well. So they don't stay put for very long.
Wow, the questions are coming in. What sort of sound does a giraffe make when communicating? This is from Dee Dee.
You know, that is actually a more complicated question than you might have realized because there's some changes in recent science with this. Originally, if you'd asked me, you know, 5, 10 years ago, I would have told you giraffe don't vocalize, or at least they don't really vocalize. They are purely visual communicators, communicating primarily through gestures and things of that nature, which with these large bodies to gesture with and their great eyesight works great for them during the daytime. But you know when that doesn't work? When it's dark. And we're not certain that
Ah,
giraffe have a vocalization that we use in the dark, but a lot of recent giraffe studies surround this sort of thing. We think that they, you know, might make this low humming sound, barely audible, to communicate when visual communication is not reliable. Now, can I tell you definitively that, yeah, giraffe hum to talk to each other? No, this is still being researched, but that's one of the fun things about learning about these animals is biology is not static. It changes all the time. You can't take anything you think you know about these animals for granted because new studies come out every single year.
that's incredible. We have a question from Seth. Seth wants to know what's their favorite food.
Frankly, this is one of them right here, the cottonwood that we have here. Other foods that they eat on our property include black acacia, which is a lot like the thorny acacia that they might eat in Africa. They'll also eat a little bit of bamboo here as well. And when we have to do training sessions with them to, you know, maybe do a little pedicure, do a little hoof trim with them, and we really want to incentivize, you know, that behavior, we give them a special treat, maybe a little bit of carrot or banana like that. Not too much because those things have a lot of sugar in them, but as a special treat, those can be really nice.
Oh, it looks like your cameraman zooming in on their tongues. Let's talk a little bit about that giraffe tongue. And are you getting slobbered on?
The answer to am I getting slobbered on is almost always yes when I'm out here with the giraffe. When all you eat is leaves, a little extra saliva goes a long way, so they can be a little bit drooly on occasion. But the giraffe tongue, love talking about that. It's fascinating. For one thing, in some cases, it's almost an inch long for every foot tall the animal is, which means a full-grown giraffe at 16 to 18 feet tall has a tongue that can be around 16 to 18 inches long. Now, that's not out of the mouth. That's to where the tongue attaches in the back of the throat, but that's still a gigantic tongue. And the tongue is also purple in color, you might have noticed, and that has a lot to do with sun protection. The giraffe's tongue actually spends so much time out of its mouth in the sun that it would otherwise be vulnerable to a sunburn, but being that little bit darker in color means it doesn't burn quite as easily in the sun.
Yeah. So when you say their tongues out of their mouth a lot during the day, do they groom themselves or is it only strictly for eating and drinking water and that?
Well, I won't say that giraffe don't groom themselves or one another. We have observed a little bit of that behavior, but the main reason to have such a gigantically long tongue is going to be the way that they eat. In the wilds, they eat from the trees, the thorny acacia trees in Africa, which can provide challenge given the big thorns. So having a big prehensile tongue that they can reach in past all those big thorns, wrap it around the group of leaves they want, and to
Cool.
pull them out of that tree is really handy. Their teeth are really helpful for this as well. It's hard to tell just by looking at them, but giraffe only have teeth on the bottom of their mouth, and on the top there's a big, hard, flat palate. Those teeth on the bottom, they have little grooves in them, and the idea is they're going to get a branch like this in their mouth, and they're going to bite down on it, and that groove in the teeth allows the branch to slip back out, and they tear all the leaves off in the process and get what
Cool.
they're really looking for. Can they eat the stem? Sure, but they're really after the leaves.
So they're kind of like grinding back and forth with the top plate in their teeth. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Like I was saying, eating nothing but leaves provides some interesting challenges. There's a lot of cellulose going on there. There's a lot to break down, and grinding it with those big flat teeth on the bottom and the big hard palate on the top is a really helpful start to that digestive system. But again, that is just a start. If you grew up on a farm, you may have heard the expression chewing your cud. Giraffe do this sort of thing too. They get a big wad of grass and leaves in their mouth. They chew it up. They swallow it down that 6-foot esophagus. Then they regurgitate it back up into their mouth, chew it some more,
Ugh.
swallow it, and repeat a few times.
So how much do giraffes eat in a day? Do you have any idea?
You know, in terms of poundage, I don't know how much food a giraffe puts away in a day. I know they grow to about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds full grown by eating nothing but grass and leaves. And I do know that in the wild, they spend about 15 to 20 hours a day just eating. Can I give you a volume or a weight? No, but I could tell you they eat a lot and they spend most of their time in the wild out looking for food. Uh, I'm frozen. Let me take a look here.
Stoneberg, he would like to know how old the giraffes are. No, we see a giraffe picture on the plains. I don't know where you went, Nate.
Oh, how about now? Are we back?
You got to fix this. We're seeing, you got Are we back? We purchase a ticket to see on our streaming channel called The Woman Who Loved Giraffes. And it's about Dr. Ann Dragg. And she started researching about giraffes in the 1950s. She's considered the authority. She wrote a book. It's what scientists use today. It's given them a lot of the information. And she's in her 90s. She's still around. She did visit Safari West a year ago, which is really wonderful to have such a special guest. So, how you doing, Nate?
Looks like my
There you go. You're back.
Oh, can we see me? Am I back?
I can see that you're back. Yay!
We're back. Fabulous. Thank you for bearing with us through those technical difficulties there.
I have a question from Sierra.
Okay.
Is it true that giraffes eat about 75% of the time that they're awake, or do they not eat so much during the day?
Well, they only sleep for maybe a few hours a day in the wild, and they spend about 15 to 20 hours a day looking for food and eating. So I think 75% sounds about accurate. I haven't heard that exact figure, but knowing what I know about their eating habits, that sounds pretty accurate.
How many species of giraffes are there? Braden would like to know.
Okay. How many species of giraffe are there? There are 9 species of giraffe. That has not always been the classification. There was a time years ago that I could have told you there were 4 species of giraffe with 9 subspecies, but today we classify 9 distinct species of giraffe.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. You were talking, yeah, I see we got feeders out there helping us along here.
Yeah, we got a little bit of help. Shout out to Nikki and Molly over here, some of our giraffe
Nikki,
caretakers. We love to get to be able to talk about the animals, but these are the people putting in the hard hours to make sure that they are happy, healthy, and have the best habitats possible over here.
That's wonderful. You know, we were talking about their eating and they regurgitate. So tell me about their stomach. Do they have just one stomach?
Great question. Does the giraffe have just one stomach? Well, not really. They are ruminant digesters, kind of like a cow. They have that four-chambered stomach system that we see on animals like that are really helpful for breaking down your food when, again, you eat nothing but grass and leaves. So earlier I was talking about chewing your cud. When they get that wad of grass and leaves in their mouth, they chew that up into a paste and they swallow it. It's actually not going all the way to what we would classically consider as a stomach. It is going to a pre-stomach chamber called the rumen. That's the first of those four chambers. There it's combined with enzymes and regurgitated back up into the mouth where it can be broken down further by more mastication, more chewing. And
Mm.
that process repeats a few times before it goes then from the rumen through the next of the three stomach chambers before exiting the way all food does.
Julie'd like to know what's the typical lifespan of a giraffe? And I'm assuming that it differs from captivity to the wild.
That is correct. So average lifespan for a giraffe in the wild, maybe 18 to 20 years. Of course, there's always exceptions to that in either direction. A facility like this, in a human-created habitat, maybe a little bit longer. Here, they don't have to worry about getting eaten. They don't have to worry about a food shortage. We will always find food for them. And if, heaven forbid, they ever get sick or injured, we have wonderful veterinarians that specialize in these gigantic animals that can get them the care they need to make sure they're as healthy as possible. So oldest giraffe we have here at Safari West is 23 years old. We have a 22-year-old as well, so that's well above the natural lifespan in the wild already. And I believe that the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo in the United States has a 30-year-old giraffe that is still
Whoa.
with them. So they can live quite a bit longer than 20 if they get the best care possible.
What's the average height of a giraffe? How tall can they get?
Average height for a giraffe, that's going to be 16 to 18 feet tall on a full-grown giraffe. Of course, there are exceptions to that as well. We have a giraffe here that we think is maybe around 20 feet tall, so they can get a little bit bigger, and sometimes they don't get quite that big. It's like people. Some of us are very tall, some of us aren't so tall, and everything in between.
So that leads me to the question Denise just sent in. Do they have personalities?
Do they have personalities? A hard question to answer in a business like this. We try not to anthropomorphize. These are giraffe, they're not people, but I would say yes, they absolutely do. Some of them are a little bit more nervous when we bring the cameras around and will stare at us from a distance skeptically. Some of them are super friendly, and when they see us come around, they come right up to us. Some of them are a little skittish. Some of them don't really care what's going on in their surroundings. Some of them are a little bit shy. Some of them aren't. So yeah, do the giraffe have personalities? Maybe not the same way that people have personalities, but yes, they are definitely distinct in that regard.
Well, it's great because I see so many have come up to be part of our Zoomfari today, which is really exciting. Can we talk a little bit about the horns on top of their heads? Are they hard? Are they soft? They look like they have a lot of little fuzzy feelers on them. Can we close? Oh, good job, cameraman. Thanks, Vernon.
Thanks, Vernon. Talking about what's on the top of the giraffe's head. Yes, absolutely. We call these ossicones. They are actually not horns. They are horn-like structures, but there's a couple big reasons why we can't call them horns. Number one, they've got skin and fur on them, and that's not something you see on normal horns. And number two, arguably more interestingly, is that baby giraffe are born with their ossicones. Now, this is a little odd, right? Animals with horns can't be born with their horns for what I hope are obvious reasons. But giraffe can be born with their ossicones because when they are first born, the ossicones are present, but they're typically soft. And in some cases, they're flat to the skull. And after birth, they protrude upwards, and then they go through a process called ossification, where we get the name ossicone. And this process is a fancy way of saying they harden, turn to bone, and fuse to the animal's skull. There they'll stay the animal's whole life. And while two ossicones are particularly obvious, it's actually true of the giraffe that they have 5 ossicones. That hump in the center of the head is technically a
Mm.
3rd ossicone, and the 2 smaller humps behind the 2 larger humps are 4th and 5th as well. The 5
Oh,
of these
yeah.
together, they make a helmet for the giraffe's head.
Oh, oh, wow, that's a great close-up. We can really see them.
Are they
Elizabeth wants to
gentle?
know, are they gentle or can
Are
they
they
be
gentle or
aggressive?
aggressive? That is a great question. And frankly, it kind of comes back to, do they have personalities? And I'll say, while one giraffe may be gentle, another may be aggressive. They are all different. They are all unique. They all have their own set of reactions to different sets of circumstances. So I would say that I'm sure there are gentle giraffe. I wouldn't say they're all gentle. And I would say that, there may be defensive giraffe. I wouldn't use the word aggressive, but defensive giraffe. But they might not all be as defensive. They are unique in that regard.
So let's talk about that. How do they protect
Excellent question. So
themselves
what does the giraffe have to worry about when it's out
in
in
the
Africa?
wild, and
Well, not
who are
much. This
their
animal is
enemies?
gigantic, and its primarily defense is going to be a super powerful kick. And you probably don't have to take my word for the power behind that kick, because look at all that leg they got to work with right there. So maybe a lion might threaten a giraffe, maybe. But in most cases, if the giraffe can land that kick, it's going to take out the lion, maybe even in one shot. And unlike a horse, they're not just kicking backwards. They can kick out to their sides a little bit, and they can even kick out in front of them pretty well. So they've got all their bases covered, and they've got a lot of power there. So there's not that much of a threat. Now, that's giraffe versus a predator. If we're talking about giraffe versus giraffe, nobody's eating anybody, but maybe they're fighting over territory or access to females. Giraffe are going to use a totally different weapon for this. They're going to use their necks and their heads. Giraffe necking is their form of competition for dominance. It's typically between male giraffe, and they swing their heads and necks at each other, effectively using their head like a wrecking ball. And that's kind of what those ossicones we talked about are for. They're a helmet.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the head is a wrecking ball, but you got to protect it too, because, of course, a head's a precious thing.
Yes, it is. How long are their necks, and are there bones, vertebrae in their necks?
Absolutely. So how long is the giraffe's neck? Around 6 feet long, some up to 7, some down to 5, but around 6 feet long. And yes, they have vertebrae in their neck. They have the bones from their spinal column in their neck, much like most mammals. And while you might look at that huge neck and think, boy, they've got to have way more vertebrae than us, that's actually not the case. They have the same number of vertebrae in their neck as us. And in fact, basically every mammal on planet Earth has the same number of vertebrae in their neck, with only a few exceptions. The ones that come to mind being the sloth and the manatee that I could name off the top of my head. But most mammals have the same number of vertebrae in their neck. Just ours are these little bitty discs, and theirs are these big, gigantic bones.
So let's talk a little bit. You were talking about their power in their legs, their kick.
Mhm.
Their knees don't bend front to back like ours do. So how do they get a drink of water? Do they lay down? What's going on with those long legs?
That's a great question. How does this animal reach the ground given its shape? Well, there's two big difficulties here. One, if it kneels forward with all that neck, it's very front heavy, and that provides a bit of a logistical problem for them getting down. So kneeling forward, it's not something you're typically going to see with a giraffe unless they're entering or exiting a sitting position. And the other challenge here is it's hard to see, but you'll notice a bulge at the back of the giraffe's neck whenever they bend down. This is a big, gigantic tendon that holds the head up in a resting position. So when the giraffes head up, this is resting for them. And when they need to reach the ground, they engage the muscles in the front of their body to pull their head towards the ground, bending that
Wow.
big rubber band of a tendon, stretching that out so that they can reach the ground. Now, given that this requires so much effort, they want to get closer to the ground without starting to bend so they can minimize that distance. So what you'll actually see is they'll go into a partial split with their front legs. They will spread their
Mm.
front legs super wide so that they're not bending their neck as far to reach the ground. So if you ever see a giraffe doing the splits, it might be getting a drink of water or eating something up off the ground.
Wow. Pretty cool. I think, are you froze up again on me? So Norma wants to know, what are the ossicons used for? Did we
We
talk about
touched on
that?
it only briefly, and can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, excellent. So the ossicones are really there because of the way giraffe compete with one another, or at least that's our best idea as to what ossicones are there for. It's very hard to say an animal looks this way for this exact reason. This is why biology is so interesting. We learn new ideas as to why animals have certain adaptations all the time. But the leading idea as to why ossicones are so useful for giraffe is that when they fight each other, they are swinging their heads and necks at each other. And if you use your head as a weapon, you need a bit of a helmet to protect your head,
Okay.
and those
Yeah.
points actually help do a little bit more damage too when they're fighting as well.
Do they sleep standing up?
They absolutely can. Yeah, absolutely. Can a
Or do they lay down? Can they get
They
down and
can.
up again?
So giraffe laying down is an interesting thing. You don't see it very often in the wild. And that's not because it's uncomfortable for them. It's because it puts them in an extremely vulnerable position.
Mm.
Earlier, we talked about lion versus giraffe. And I said if the lion is seen by the giraffe, if the giraffe is aware of it, the giraffe stands a really good chance against it with those powerful legs. But this animal takes quite a bit of time to lay down on the ground and stand back up. And as a result, if they are caught by a predator while they're laying down, they're in a much more vulnerable position. They don't stand as good a chance against that predator. So, can you see giraffe laying down in the wild? Maybe, but you'd be getting really lucky because it doesn't happen very often. Here at a place where they might not have as many predators, or they definitely don't have as many predators lurking around their habitats, you will see them lay down a little bit more often, particularly the much older giraffe. And in terms of sleep, yes, they could sleep sitting down, but they can also sleep standing up as well.
Okay. John would like to know, how many babies have been born at Safari West?
How many over the years?
Yeah, do we know?
Um, I don't have that answer off the top of my head.
Oh,
Over
that's
50. I'm
all
getting
right.
over 50 from behind the camera. Over 50 since we opened our gates in 1993.
And then what do you do? Because you don't have 50 giraffes there with you. So what,
That's a
where
great
do these
question.
giraffes go?
Where do our giraffe go? It depends on if they're male or they're female. But what it comes down to is we do trade with facilities like us. We are accredited by the AZA, that is the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums. This is something that we're very pleased to be a part of because they certify facilities that give great care to their animals. So not only does this mean that we're doing what we should be doing to make sure these animals are happy, healthy, and comfortable as possible, it means that we can trade our animals with the other AZA accredited facilities throughout the country. And what's even better is the AZA has a species survival plan for this animal that helps facilitates which animals maybe should go to which facilities
Mm.
to have the best possible genetic population so that these animals can be as healthy as possible. So let's say that we have a new baby boy giraffe. He might stay with us until he's maybe 10 feet tall for a few years. But as
Wow.
soon as he's starting to get a little bit more independent, the way male giraffe do in the wild, he's thinking about going off on his own, thinking about starting his own family. It's likely he will go to one of our partner facilities that is looking for a new male giraffe, and he will get to find that new territory, and he will get to start that new family there with a bunch of unrelated female giraffe that the AZA has determined would be good genetic matches for him. Baby girls, they'll typically stay with us for the most part. Yeah, but that's about how it goes.
Wow. How big is Safari West? Because when I'm looking and seeing the background, you got the hills and everything. So can you share a
Mhm.
little bit about Safari West and how large the facility is?
Absolutely. So Safari West is not small. We are a 400-acre preserve here. 400 acres, most of which is devoted to animal habitats. We have 2 habitats that are 100 acres in size that have several different species inside of them, allowing as close to wild as possible interactions between the animals. We do have a few acres that are set aside for our overnight camp where you can spend the night here as well. And we do have a portion of our property that has been set aside as open space, because as much as we love these African mammals, we do care about a lot about the conservation of the native species to California. And so we've set aside some protected land for them as well.
Nate, we're frozen again. I don't know why we're having so much trouble. We got all the giraffes today and poor internet, I think. I'm not sure what's going on. But while you're checking that, I've got a couple other questions for you. So the organs, Allison and Casey would like to know, are the organs inside the giraffe the same as in people?
That is a great question, and I'm hoping you can hear me on this response here. But it all depends on which organs we are referring to. Are their digestive systems the same? Absolutely not. Like I said, they've got that ruminant digestive system. But if we're talking about, vertebrae in the spine, that's very similar. Like us, they have tongues, they have teeth, they have eyes, they have noses, they have ears. Just these organs are in very, very different proportions depending on the adaptations this animal needs for survival.
Okay. Yeah, we have your frozen screen, but we can hear you okay, and we get a nice the giraffe that has come in from Elizabeth. Elizabeth wants to know, can the giraffes move their necks in a circle?
That's an interesting question. I've been guiding safaris here for 5 years, and can giraffe move their heads in a circle is not one I've actually gotten. The owl can turn their head all the way around. And the giraffe has a lot of neck flexibility, and they can look all the way over their shoulder and even a little bit farther. They certainly have quite a bit more flexibility in their neck than us. But in terms of a full 360, yeah. We have seen that sort of thing before, although usually it's more like a roll, kind of like this. Am I back in the picture, by the way?
No, you are not. You are frozen. So I don't know if our cameraman, what's going on, Vernon? What are you doing to us?
Okay.
I'm
going to pull the Jeep slightly closer to the barn. Can you hold this? Okay.
Okay, we can hear you, so that's okay. You do what you need to do. But I have a question. What are baby giraffes called?
Baby giraffes are going to be calves.
So they are like cows. They're called calves.
Okay, I've got my workstation much closer to our internet point here. Hopefully we're going to get a better connection.
Yay. Well, that's what happens. We're out on a Zoomfari here, kids and families. The internet is spotty at the best. So giraffes, do they stay in families or herds? This is what Elizabeth would like to know. Or is there another name for a group?
Giraffe do stick together in herds. We're going to call that for most animals that travel together in groups like this, but they have specific group names as well. And let me just reset my video here. Maybe I can get back on with you guys. Okay.
I have to say, I did get a nice comment from Marianne. She said baby giraffes are called adorable.
They are. It's true. So in terms of group names for giraffe, if a herd of giraffe is moving, they can be referred to as a journey of giraffe. But I think my favorite group name for this animal is if a group of giraffe are all standing still together, you can call them a tower.
Tower? Is that real? Or did you just make that up?
No, I did not make that up. I promise.
So I have a question. Do you know when people first started, and for the history of a giraffe, how old is it? Does that make sense? Did my question make sense to you? Like, have people, are giraffes from prehistoric? Have they changed over the ages? Anything that you can tell us about their history?
Well, like a lot of life on this earth, it's likely that the giraffe we see today doesn't look exactly like the giraffe from many, many thousands of years ago. But they have been on the earth for quite a long time, a similar time to a lot of bovine species that we see being present on the earth. In terms of a number of years ago that I can give you, I don't have one off the top of my head. Unfortunately, I don't have an evolutionary biologist here with me, but they have been on the earth for many, 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 many thousands of years.
Well, you have everybody coming in. Is there by chance any way to see the heart-shaped spot?
Actually, are you getting a video from here?
I am getting
Fabulous. So the giraffe with the heart
a video
spot, if
feed from
I'm
you.
correct, is Kasha, who is right here with us. Unfortunately, that spot is on the flank that she's got facing away from us right now. So if she turns around, we're going to get the camera here. Let me see if I can bring her around with a little bit of. Okay, watch. We're moving the camera a little bit. It's gonna be,
Wrong side. There we go. Got to go the other side. The reason I know this, everybody, is because I was able to see it. Some of you caught in early could see it, and it is a spot not in a triangle, but in a true heart, and it's right on her backside, her flank side. Oh, we have a lot of them wanting to see us. Of
everybody's
course
coming.
she's camera shy. Oh, but that's all right. We'll say hi to everybody else. Can we talk a little bit about their eyelashes? Because they have great eyelashes.
Giraffe do have great eyelashes. I'm glad you pointed that out, Cathy. Uh, so giraffe sight is a big sense for them. You can really tell by looking at an animal's features. If a feature is particularly large relative to the rest, it probably means that that's a very important or even dominant sense for them. For example, his face, you'll notice it has this big gigantic head and tiny little eyeballs. That's a good indication that not what they're going to be relying on as much as scent and hearing and things like that. But when we look at the giraffe, we see big eyes, and that tells you that visuals are very important to this animal. And when your head's high off the ground, you're not walking under shade all that often. And when you need to rely on your eyes to communicate with the rest of your, it's very important that you don't have too much glare in your eyes. And so that's a lot what those eyelashes are doing there, is they're keeping the glare out of the eye. You'll also notice they have that layer of black around their eyes there, almost a little bit mascara like. That black is similar to the way professional athletes wear the stripe of black under their eyes to try to get the sun out of a little bit.
Oh, very cool. Their ears are big too. So I'm assuming their sense of hearing is pretty acute.
It is indeed. Yeah, big ears means they have a pretty great sense of hearing, especially during the vantage point where those ears are positioned. You may
Great.
also notice that ears pivot. Their hearing is somewhat directional. They can pivot their ears around to help them try to figure out where sound is coming from, even when the source of sound might not necessarily be in view.
Wow, that's incredible. Any other fun facts today, Nate, that you want to share about our friends, the giraffes?
Well, the main fun fact I want to y'all is that we're hoping that Safari West will be open for business in the very near future, and some of y'all might be able to come out here and see us. In terms of facts, I didn't mention the giraffe has a particularly large heart. This shouldn't come as a
Good.
surprise if we're looking at the position of the chest versus position of the brain. This animal has a long, long ways to go to pump blood from the chest to the brain. So the heart has to be pretty tremendous and strong. And, it's not going to be the largest of the mammal world. It's not quite elephant sized, but I read a figure that a giraffe heart can be around 25 pounds, which is just huge.
Wow, that's huge. And I'm going to ask you one more question before then I ask you a little bit more about Safari West. How fast can giraffes run?
Can giraffe around 25 miles per hour, the average top speed
Wow.
for a giraffe. But one of my favorite things when I get asked that question, with legs of this length, even speed like 25 miles per hour. It almost looks like they're moving in slow motion with those big, gigantic legs.
Oh, that's cool. Is it called a gallop?
Is it called a gallop? I don't know if it's a technical term. You could refer to it as a gallop, I'm sure. Refer to it as their gait, the way they step. But me, I just call it a run.
Okay, I do have a couple finishing questions up so we can wrap up our Zoomfari and that today. You have several animals at Safari West. You have rhinos and zebras and water buffalo, gazelle. You have an incredible aviary. And do you know how many different species, not counting the native species of bobcat and mountain lion and that you have at Safari West?
So I shouldn't count the Canada geese, you're saying?
I know, but I could hear them honking.
Yeah, they're always back there. So in terms of species of animals and numbers of animals at Safari West, we are around 100 species and around
Wow.
1,000 total individuals.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, so when we talked about it, so Safari West should be opening up again soon, and people can go out and go on a real safari, learn more about those animals. Oh, are we working at our heart?
Yeah, so I didn't want to interrupt you there, Cathy, but we mentioned earlier that Kasha, one of our oldest giraffe, has that one perfect shaped heart spot on her backside, and thanks to the expert camera work from Vernon and the expert giraffe positioning work by our lead keeper here, Nikki, we have that in view. So big thank you to Nikki and Vernon. That is a shaped spot right there.
Oh, that's magical. That's fabulous as our last shot for that. So one last thing, right now you guys have done some incredible little videos that you have up on your website. Can you talk about the website, and also if people are interested, and while we're still limited for our shelter in place, you do have Zoomfaris available for groups. So you want to talk about the website, how to visit that, and your Zoomfaris.
Yeah, absolutely. So easiest way to learn more about Safari West is safariwest.com. On that website, you will find two other ways to contact us. The phone line for the front desk. We've got somebody there every day to answer your questions, and not just about, how to get a reservation here or what spending the night is like. If you just want to call us and ask your giraffe questions, we may not have an answer at the front desk. We can find someone who has an answer for you, and we're more than happy to answer those questions. You can also email us at info@safariwest.com. And in terms of the videos we've been doing, we have been doing 2 weekly videos throughout most of quarantine to try to give people a little bit of something to keep from feeling bored at home. We understand a lot of people are stuck at home right now. You might not be able to travel, but we're doing our best to help you feel like you're traveling by bringing you here through our videos. Every Monday, we have an episode of Personal with Peter. Our owner, Peter Lang, talks to different members of the caretakers about the animals and the stories around their arrival at Safari West. And then we also have another weekly video. One of those is going to be Behind the Barn Door, more conversations with caretakers about the animals that they look after. We even did a funny video a little while back, Quarantine Kitchen, if you want to see our little cooking show we have here where we put together animal diets. If you would like a more personal experience, you can have your own Zoomfari like me and Cathy are doing today. Zoomfaris can be set up over Zoom, GoToMeeting, Skype, whatever your platform is. And if you want 15 minutes or 30 minutes with me and the giraffe on camera in front of you where I can answer all your questions, that is a good setup for your family or business, your classroom or anything like that.
Oh, thanks, Nate. Also, everybody, I just want to mention that if you've enjoyed today's Zoomfari, please send us a message at cameocinema.com. If you'd like to see more Zoomfaris, because I love working with Nate and our friends at Safari West, please let us know. And if you have the opportunity to watch the movie currently on our streaming channel, it's The Woman Who Loved Giraffes. I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to join us on our Zoomfari. Oh, that's a beautiful picture, Nate. You look great. I want to thank Nate and all of his giraffe friends for participating. And I just want to say thanks, everybody. Be safe, and we'll see you soon.